Hello, welcome to Raymond Castile's Basement of Horror. Today we're going to look at the Remco Monsters at Home. In our previous two episodes, we looked at the Remco mini monsters, these little guys. And we looked at the Remco 9-inch monsters. These big guys. And today, we're going to look at the third major monster series that Remco made in the early 80s, the Monsters at Home. The 9-inch monsters were released in 1980. And then in 1981, we had a second series of the 9-inch monsters, plus the 3 3/4-inch mini monsters. Now, I understand that the Monsters at Home were released in 82 and continued through 84, but the cards for Monsters at Home, the cards are copyrighted 1981. The cards say 1981. So I don't know. I guess maybe the catalogs from 1982 are the first ones to show the Monsters at Home. I'm not sure. I don't have those catalogs. So it's my understanding that they're 82 to 84, but they're dated 81 on the cards. Remco is the same company that made the Azrak Hamway Universal Monsters. And here again with these guys, there's some debate about when the Ahai monsters were out. I say 73 to 76, although lately people have been saying 74, but that's not true because this little guy is dated 73 right on the bottom of his foot. So there's 73. 73 to 76, and then some other company picked up the molds and continued making them even longer than that. Remco, and please go to look at the previous two episodes for the whole story of Azrak Hamway and Remco, and when Remco started and when it was bought by Azrak Hamway. Just for now, understand that Ahai, Azrak Hamway International, and Remco are the same company, at least at this point in 1980. They are the same company. So the same company that made those Azrak Hamway monsters a few years earlier also made these Remco monsters. So they made the 9-inch monsters, the glow monsters with the crushing action, for 2 years at least. And then they had the mini monsters. But they were looking for something else to do with the heads and the hands for those 9-inch monsters. I don't know if in, let's say 82, the 9-inch monsters were no longer being produced. I think that might be the case. I think they were only out for 2 years. And then they had a bunch of surplus heads and hands, and they didn't know what to do with it. I don't know if maybe they took back a bunch of surplus, like clearance stock. Sometimes that happens. The stores send them back and they say, well, what do we do with these? I don't know what the deal was. I suspect they had, I'm just guessing, that they had heads and hands on hand in their warehouse, and they wanted to do something with these to use them and make another product line with them. But maybe not. Maybe they really believed in this Monsters at Home line, and they were really excited and wanted to get this line of little monster finger puppets out, and they revved up the assembly line again and produced more hands and heads just for this line. I have no idea. But the Monsters at Home are basically finger puppets. They took the Remco heads and put them on a fabric body, and they took the hands and stuck them on arms on this little fabric body, and made little finger puppets out of the Remco monsters. And they're called Monsters at Home because they're in these little boxes. I just recently saw the first episode of the new BBC Dracula series. I haven't seen episode 2 or 3. Everybody says 1 is great, 2 is okay, and 3 is meh. I guess I'll find out for myself. But the first episode is pretty good, as everyone agrees. But there's a scene in there where there are these square boxes, and here's a spoiler if you haven't seen that, the BBC Dracula series spoiler. These little squarish boxes, and you think maybe it's Dracula's soil or clothes or something in there. Well, there are, I won't say more than, I'll call them creatures. There are creatures in there. And when these creatures came out of those boxes, I thought of the Monsters at Home. And these little boxes with little monsters that come out of these boxes. It kind of reminded me of that. I'm sure they were not inspired by Monsters at Home. I'm sure they had nothing to do with anything. It was just a little weird connection that my geeky toy collector brain made. Well, let's look at one. So I'm not just talking in the abstract. You can see what I mean. Here we go. Here is an actual example of the Monsters at Home. That's Frankenstein. Monsters at Home Frankenstein. And this is his home, this little box. It looks like some kind of a travel case, not a suitcase, but those bigger cases that people, what do you call them, like a travel trunk or something, like in the old days, they had those big trunks and they'd put all their wardrobe in there if they were going on a sea voyage or something. Oh, like if you're in an Agatha Christie mystery on a ocean liner, you'd have one of these big trunks full of all your belongings. Kind of what it reminds me of. So this box, it's some kind of lab equipment. It's like something that would be in Dr. Frankenstein's lab. Some square piece of lab gear. And on the side, it does look kind of like, let me see here. It looks like sort of like a crate on the side. So it's definitely lab equipment. It's got kind of cyberpunk looking, not cyberpunk, steampunk, excuse me. Steampunk looking artwork on the sides. And it's just some piece of lab gear in a crate, I guess. And that's Frankenstein's home. It says that it's it's a sea chest is what it says. A sea chest. And I guess that's the word I was looking for. I think that's what those are. Sea chest isn't that those big luggage chests if you go on a cruise, like I say, like in an Agatha Christie story or something, or a Poirot or whatever, or some kind of turn of the century horror story. They've always got these big chests with all their belongings. Is that a sea chest? Because I think of like sea chests as being like Davy Jones or something older, but maybe that's what those are. Maybe that's what they mean. I don't know, but it calls it a sea chest. And you can keep them in there, or you can take the back of this off and put your hand in there, and you can manipulate him and make him open the door. You see his hand fits in the door or window, whatever. It opens up, and you can make him come out and say hello, or you can pull him out of there completely and just have him as a hand puppet or finger puppet. And he glows in the dark. Head and hands glow in the dark. And the top here, and they all say the same thing, except for the name of the monster. It says, Frankenstein is at home until he begins to show his glowing face or come out and play. It's got PLAAAY ... And they all say the same thing except for changing the monster's name. Universal City Studios Monsters at Home, glows in the dark, Frankenstein hand puppet. I'm calling them finger puppets just because they've got the arms, but you put one finger up into the head. Hand puppet, finger puppet, whatever. They're just so small. I think of them more like a finger puppet. Then the back shows all the ones that are available, and this is the same aesthetic that is used on the mini monsters. Same kind of style of artwork and black and white photography, and really more like the mini monster artwork than the 9-inch monster artwork. And it's interesting that it shows the mini monsters, the action figures, but does not show the 9-inch monsters. So that would lead me to believe that they had ceased production on the 9-inch monsters and they shifted over to these. And it shows Creature, Frankenstein, Mummy, Dracula, Monsters at Home, and same characters plus Wolfman and Phantom in the mini monsters. Well, this is interesting. Okay, so it says here, when Monsters at Home come out to play, a mini monster can have a stay. Monsters at Home cases make great places for all 6 authentic, posable, glow-in-the-dark action figures from Universal's famous Mini Monsters collection. Get the whole creepy crew. So they're suggesting that these are almost like accessories to the mini monsters, that you would use these cases with the mini monsters. That's what they're suggesting on the back. That's interesting. So they're kind of tying those two lines together, and also the artwork ties them together, and the size of the card and everything. So they're sort of ditching the incompatibility of these two sets that don't really go together. Like, not these two sets. These two sets that are maybe too different in some ways, and trying to consolidate it and make it more standardized with these two sets, which have more in common. So it's like the 9-inch monsters are kind of the odd man out, and so they're getting rid of those and going with 2 sets that are more consistent and work together a little more. I don't have any loose ones. I used to have a loose Monsters at Home. I think it was a Wolfman, but I looked around. I couldn't find him. I think I sold him a long time ago. But I have a card set, so we're going to see the card set. One interesting thing about this Frankenstein card, it looks like someone took a Sharpie magic marker and crossed out some of the lettering on the left side of the card. And even though it might appear that was an attempt to disguise resealing the bubble, that's not the case. Those black marks are printed on the card. It's part of the card art. It's actually printed. No one took a marker to this card. I've examined it very closely, and it's not marks on the card. It's actually baked into the printed card art. Those black marks are printed on the card. So it came off the assembly line looking like that. And the bubble is not resealed. It's perfectly sealed with the original seal. And I've compared it to the other cards. There's no difference in the seal. It's the original seal, and I can't explain why some of the letters are blacked out. I don't know what that is. I don't know if it's a factory error. I don't know if all Frankenstein cards are like that or just mine. I've never had another one to compare. But it looks weird, but it is printed that way. That's part of the printing on the card. It's not something that somebody did to the card. it was manufactured that way. So there's Frankie. Here's Dracula. Let me just take a quick look to see if there's anything different. So Dracula says has a sarcophagus. That's what it calls his casket or his coffin. Looks like a coffin to me. There's Dracula. And I like how he has the bones. He has bones down here. It kind of reminds me of the Lincoln Monster card artwork with the bones, with the broken coffin and the bones showing. There's Dracula, and he doesn't have a cape. He just has. They all just have solid, single color fabric bodies. He just has a black fabric body. But his box, instead of square, is shaped like a coffin or casket. I know coffin casket are not the same thing, but I'm not sure what the difference is sitting here right now without looking it up. Anyway, and it says the same thing up here. Dracula is at home until slowly he begins to show his glowing face and come out and play. They all say the same thing. Now on the back, it has instructions. I guess you need instructions for these because they're so complicated. Number 1, monsters at home are easy to use. Remove the back panel and open the lid. Place your hand inside the monster with 1 finger in the head and 1 in each arm. Put the monster into the back of the case. Tuck his right hand securely under the bar on the inside of the lid. Close the lid. Now your monster is ready. Ever so slowly, make him push open the lid and show his glow-in-the-dark face. Monsters at home are also creepy fun when they come out to play. Each one is a hand puppet you can use all alone, away from home. When your monster needs a rest, snap the back panel on tight. Place him inside and shut the lid. That'll keep him where you want him till the next time. Collect all 4 of Universal famous monsters at home and let them come out to play together. After all, even monsters need friends. Well, there's Dracula. He's cool. Same head and hands as the 9-inch figures, though it looks like the plastic on these hands, maybe it's just Dracula, because it doesn't look that way at Frankenstein. There's definitely Dracula's hands look like they're made of darker colored plastic. Don't know why. Maybe it's just maybe it's made that way. Maybe it's some kind of oxidation. I don't know. Okay, here is the creature from the Black Lagoon. He is in a sea chest, and it's got all kinds of seaweed, and it looks like a chest, like Davy Jones' locker. It looks like a pirate chest. It looks like a chest for sure. There he is. The Gillman, creature from the Black Lagoon. And usually, if they're only going to make 4 characters, they're going to make Dracula, Frankenstein, Wolfman, Mummy. You generally don't see the creature if there's only 4 of them. So that's interesting that they chose to make the creature. There is no Wolfman, and there is no Phantom, unlike both the 9-inch and the mini monsters have Wolfman and Phantom. Not in this set. There's only these 4. Now, maybe they thought there'd be a second series and they were holding them back for a second series. I don't know why they would do that, but maybe that was the idea. Or maybe they just didn't know what to do with Wolfman and Phantom as far as what their home would be. I mean, if you can stick Frankenstein into a piece of lab equipment in creature into a sea chest. I think you can figure out something to stick Wolfman in. Just just an old wooden crate or something. I don't know. And Phantom, he could have been in an organ. It could have looked like he was coming up out of an organ. They could have had a little keyboard down there, like he was coming up out of the organ. So they could have done that. But for whatever reason, they just wanted to make these 4. But it's interesting that they chose the creature, because usually he gets omitted. Not this time. We have a creature in this set. How interesting. I don't know if these were all made in the same quantity, or if there were any that were harder to find than the others. As collectibles now, they seems to me that they're equally difficult or common, and there's really no difference. It seems to me that they're all kind of the same difficulty level in finding them. Well, and Creature has his Gillman hands. They didn't give him generic hands. He's got the same Gillman hands that the 9-inch figure has. Okay, so here we go with the last one. Here is the last one. The Mummy. Move Creature over here. Here's the Mummy. Here's the Mummy. And like the 9-inch one, and like the Mini Monster one, this is Boris Karloff as Imhotep. This is not Lon Chaney Jr. This is not Tom Tyler. This is not Clarice. This is Imhotep, Boris Karloff's version of the Mummy. And this is the only one of the 4 that has an actor likeness. Nah, it's not officially Boris Karloff, but that's what the sculpture is. It's Boris Karloff's face. In the 9-inch, you've got Lon Chaney Jr. as the Wolfman. That has a really nice actor likeness sculpt. And obviously the Phantom looks like Lon Chaney Sr. In the Mini Monsters, you've also got a Dracula that looks a lot like Bela Lugosi. And Frankenstein's debatable whether the Mini Monster Frankenstein looks like a particular actor or not. 9-inch Frankenstein definitely does not look like any particular actor. But this Mummy looks like Boris Karloff. So in this set, The Monsters at Home, this is really the only character that looks like a specific actor. The Frankenstein is more generic. It's not really based on any one actor. And Dracula is completely generic, and Creature is the Creature. So this is the only one that looks like a particular actor, Boris Karloff. Also interesting is that his sarcophagus is shaped like a sarcophagus. It's got those rounded edges. The circumference of it, the outline is rounded. It's got the shoulders and the head like a sarcophagus would have, which is not the same as Dracula, that has that coffin shape. You would think they just used the same mold. They did not. They made a specific mold for Dracula and Mummy. But Frankenstein and Creature share the same mold, as far as I can tell. It looks like it. So there's Mummy. He doesn't have any bandages. He just has a brown fabric body. No detail. None of these have details. They could have printed details. It could have been a little fancier. Each one of these could have had silkscreen printed details. Mummy could have had bandages printed on, like the 9-inch one. Dracula could have had like a little tuxedo vest or something. Creature could have had scales. Frankenstein could have had some indication of lapels and then a vest in the middle. Something. They could have done that, but they kept these pretty low cost. These are rudimentary. That's why it really seems to me that they didn't have a lot of pride in conceiving, producing, and introducing these, that these seem like some kind of a means to use up these heads and hands. That's why I suspect they had the heads and hands and they wanted to do something with the remaining stock, and so they said, let's put out a new line of toys and use them up and get them out there and make some money off these heads and hands. Or, we've already got so many thousands of these heads, let's do something with them. Because if they didn't have that and they said, we really want to make a new line of toys, what do we do? And that was their thinking. Then they said, well, we can use these heads. It seems like they would have gone the extra mile and printed the bodies, or maybe used, at least with Creature, Dracula, and Mummy, they could have used maybe the silk screen patterns for the 9-inch ones and just reuse those and stitch them into the hand puppet design. I don't know. It just really seems like something about this line they're like leftovers. Like they had these parts and they wanted to do something with them. But then they went to the trouble of making the homes that they're in, the caskets and sea chests and sarcophagus. So I don't know if maybe these boxes came from something else, if they were reusing anything. It doesn't seem like it, because at least the casket and the sarcophagus have that particular shape. And I didn't really say much about the mummy's sarcophagus. I mean, it's got Egyptian hieroglyphics. It's pretty cool, actually. It's got Egyptian hieroglyphics on it. And a cobra. Well, he doesn't have his hood. I guess maybe it's an asp. I don't know. It's a snake. And just looking at that Dracula again, boy, it looks like the Lincoln card art at the bottom with the jagged wood and the skull and bones. Oh, I didn't show you the Creature's side of his. You see the seaweed there. So it's a cute line. It's very unusual. You don't hear people talk about it very much. It's kind of hard to find. I think, you can find one or two over time, but to get all four, that's not easy on cards. Loose, I don't know how hard it is to get. I'm sure it's not as hard to get loose, but getting them on cards can be a challenge. So here's a complete set of all four. And I'm glad I have them. I mean, they're really cute little toys, cute little monsters. And as far as I know, this was the last gasp of the Remco monster output. They had the 9-inch and the mini monsters and these monsters at home. And then they had some other things like makeup kits and some other stuff. They had this little monster wave for 80, 81, and 82. I hear maybe through 84. I'm not sure about that. But early 80s. And I don't know why they thought that was the time to bring back monsters. That was Star Wars and I don't know what year He-Man started, but that was coming, the little G.I. Joes and all that stuff. It wasn't monster time. So why did Remco think now's the time to relaunch Universal Monsters? I don't know. But I'm glad they did. I was still a kid, at least for the beginning of this. I had grown out of toys by the time Monsters at Home came along. In fact, I don't think I ever saw Monsters at Home in a store. I don't remember that. I don't think I did. But I remember I was still playing with toys when the 9-inch ones came out, and I was very happy to have those. And I shown you in the previous episode my childhood ones. So I had those as a kid and had a lot of fun with them. So I'm glad they did that, but it's still kind of curious that they thought it was time at that point in history and in the toy market that it was time to relaunch a Universal Monsters line. And also with these Monsters at Home, the Dracula is licensed by Universal Studios. So like the 9-inch series the Dracula doesn't have a universal copyright on it, the 9-inch one. The Mini Monsters, it does. Mini Monsters Dracula has a universal copyright. And I know there was a lawsuit with Bela Jr. Like Bela's legal action through the 60s and 70s kept a lot of Bela-looking monster merchandise off the market, or kept it separated from the Universal toy. So if you had a Universal set, you had to separate Dracula and not make it Universal. But then in 79, I think Bela lost a lawsuit, which is unusual for him. And then for a brief time, Universal could market Dracula with no problem. But that changed. I don't know all the legal details, but Bela Lugosi Jr. regained control later of Lugosi's likeness, and you could no longer use it in conjunction with Universal Monsters. And that's the way it is today. You got to get a separate license and go through a lot of red tape, and very rarely do you get Lugosi likeness Dracula in the same set as the Universal Monsters. But I think there was a little window here after that 79 suit. It was too late for the 9-inch ones, I guess, which were probably already in development, but maybe it was just in time for the 3 3/4-inch series to be able to market Bela's face without worrying about a lawsuit. I don't know. That's all just speculation. But when these Monsters at Home came along, it doesn't have Bela's likeness, but Dracula's definitely a Universal copyrighted toy. I mean, it's licensed through Universal. I don't know what else to say about Monsters at Home. They're cute. The idea of Monsters at Home is just, and that the name is weird. It's interesting that the word monsters is coming up almost like a coffin lid opening. Monsters at Home. Strange name, strange set of toys. Strange way to close out the last great set of classic monster toys. When you're talking about the classic era, the monster craze of the 60s that started with the Aurora monster models through the 60s, and then had a second life in the 70s with the reissue of the Aurora monster models, and then the Migos and the Ahis and the Lincolns and the Tomlands and the Remcos and all the other stuff in the 70s. There was this 20-year period from early 60s to early 80s, which is the classic monster craze, monster kid era. And the last hurrah of that really is the Remco monster toys, the Universal monster toys that we've been discussing in the last 3 episodes. Really, those are the last, the final blast of that original monster craze. Not that there haven't been monster toys since, certainly have, but it's never been like that again, in terms of the monsters not being a boutique kind of a thing, marketed to adults, marketed to collectors, a kind of postmodern kind of a thing. When these toys in the 60s and 70s and early 80s, when these toys were out, these were just like buying a He-Man or a Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles or a G.I. Joe or a Batman or a Spider-Man or a Star Wars figure. It was no different. You could choose any of those, or you could choose Dracula or Frankenstein or Wolfman or Creature. Same thing. It was right in the mix with all that other stuff. It wasn't singled out as like a boutique kind of cult thing. It was mainstream children's toys, a children's toy property like all those other ones I just mentioned. And if you're a little kid, you could be excited about getting a Boris Karloff Frankenstein toy. You could be excited about a Creature from the Black Lagoon toy. you could take a toy like this creature and be excited about playing with this in the bathtub, going outside and making a mud puddle and having him swim around the mud puddle, and be excited about that. It wasn't a adult collector's item. And you didn't care whether it was licensed through this or that actor estate, whether it was Cheney estate or Lugosi estate or Karloff estate. You didn't care about any of that. And there wasn't any of that kind of separate licensing back then. You didn't really care if it was licensed through Universal or not. It didn't matter. It was just monsters. You knew them when you saw them. If it was Frankenstein's monster, didn't matter if it was licensed, not licensed, or what actor. You knew Frankenstein when you saw Frankenstein, and you were excited to get a Frankenstein toy and actually play with it. That was something special about that time. And we haven't had that since. The kids today, they don't care about these monsters. They really don't. They don't care about them. And I think that part of it is just they don't like anything old. I mean, it's hard enough to get them to, my niece is 9 years old, and trying to get her to watch any of this old stuff. I know her dad, my brother, tries. It's hard. Even watching something recent like Guardians of the Galaxy. I mean, that's a recent movie, Guardians of the Galaxy. Even then, watching Guardians of the Galaxy, halfway through that, not even half, like 20 minutes into that, she was on her phone, bored. Didn't want to watch it. That's Guardians of the Galaxy. So what chance does Creature from the Black Lagoon have, So, and I talked about this a couple videos ago. The kids really, they want the digital world. They want their phones. They want the video games. That's their childhood. We had our childhood and things we cared about. We liked imaginative play in role playing with plastic action figures representing characters that we could pretend that we're in that environment through these little totems. And if we could pretend we were Superman by making a little figure fly around. We could pretend that we were in Jaws with a little rubber shark and an adventure person, Fisher-Price adventure people, making a shark attack them. We could pretend Star Wars with our little figures or our big figures. We could pretend we were in these worlds through these little toys. And then we could go out in the backyard and put ourselves in those worlds and pretend we were these characters. And I don't think kids I don't think kids do that as much. Not anymore. I think it's very, very it's that Black Mirror. I think they're very focused on that. Which has nothing to do with Monsters at Home, but I'm just saying that really this, of all things, this line is really the last hurrah of the monster craze of the 60s and 70s. And the monster kid, I'm a monster kid, the monster kid generation really ends here with that line. What we think of as the monster kids who grew up in the 60s and 70s, that was the end of it. Well, my asthma is acting up. Okay. That's it. I know that my schedule of uploads has become irregular. It's taking about 2 weeks between videos. As I near the end of this second season of Basement of Horror, honestly, imagine that the finish line is here, the end of the season. I am crawling on my hands and knees, bloodied across that finish line, just trying to just roll over the finish line and collapse. It's not been easy the last few weeks, so I'm trying to just bring this season in for a landing the best I can. I'm just noticing that the mummy's sarcophagus is at an angle. It's molded that way in the bubble. It's designed that way. It's not straight, it's an angle. And the rest are not like that. That's interesting. Just a little observation just made. But anyway, so it's some may find it frustrating that I don't just do this 52 weeks a year. I can't do that. I just can't. So that's why I have the seasons. And we're almost at the end of the second season. One more episode, the season finale. I don't know what date that'll upload. I'm working on it. I've been working on it as I've been doing these past few episodes. I've also been working on that. It's going to be a little different as usually. I mean, I've only had one other season finale, but the pattern has been established that the season finale is a little different. And I look at something a little different. It's maybe something that's not shot in this basement. Maybe some B footage, remote footage, something a little odd, something a little off the beaten track, and that's what this one will be. You'll see some footage, archival footage from many years ago. That's what you're going to see, some archival footage from many years ago. You're going to hear an interesting story about a period of my life and some things I worked on with some other people. And this table is going to go away, and we're going to look at something so big that I can't have this table. We're going to have to take the table away and zoom out a little bit, and we're going to see something as a show and tell at the end of that episode. So does it sound interesting? I hope so. It'll be done when it's done. I don't know what date. I don't know what date you're going to see this episode. It'll be finished when it's finished. And I'm making these as quickly as I can. But that's just the reality of things. I'm not a professional full-time YouTuber. I'm never going to be at a point where I'm here every day or 2-3 times a week or whatever. Just that's not me. That's not what this is all about. Sorry. So excuse me for not getting these out a little faster, but we're nearing the end of the second season. Since the last episode is going to be kind of long-ish, I think. Let me take the time now, instead of making that episode even longer, let me take the time now to thank you very much for watching this second season of Basement of Horror. I think we're going to end up with 20 or 21 episodes, thereabouts. So it's, compared to the first one, it's been a longish season. And it's been very eventful. Remember, we started in Halloween with those Halloween episodes and the Halloween giveaway, which was a lot of fun. But then I got injured. My back got injured. And then as I was recovering from that, I got very sick. So you saw me here with crutches and coughing. My voice was gone. And then as soon as I got over that, my cat Stinker got ill, and you know the story with him. As of this recording, he's still alive. He's still eating and drinking and sleeping with me every night. We have a mattress on the floor in the living room, and he cuddles up with me and sleeps with me every night. And I'm shooting this at night, so I'm going to go from this to bed with Stinker. So I'm still giving him subcutaneous fluids every 3 days, and he's chugging along. So that happened, and then we had the whole Kappa fiasco, that crisis. Oh my gosh, where for a couple of weeks everyone thought the sky was falling, and it could have been. We didn't know. I don't think our panic was foolish. I think it was, our concern was justified because we just didn't know what was going on. So that disrupted things. Boy, oh boy. And just that alone, that took us to the end of the year. And now here we are in 2020. So it's been an eventful season since we started. I didn't know going into this that it was going to be so dramatic. Maybe too dramatic. I hope season 3 will be less dramatic, less tumultuous. When will we have season 3? I'm not going to put a date on it. We won't wait until next Halloween. Won't be that long. I'm guessing late spring, early summer, something like that. And we will probably have some specials in between the end of the season and next season. We'll have some specials, I'm sure. I don't know what they'll be, but I'm sure, like we did last time, we'll have some specials. I know on July 4th, I want to do a Jaws episode, a special Jaws episode on July 4th, for the July 4th weekend. Whether that'll be a special or part of the third season remains to be seen. It's too far out. But that's something I have planned. And I have some other special episodes I'd like to do. So that's it. Thank you for watching the second season of Basement of Horror. I appreciate everyone who watches and everyone who has given me positive feedback or negative feedback. Everyone who's told me what they think, I appreciate it. I appreciate the good words that you've given me on social media. Sometimes I think I'm a little embarrassed. You maybe feels like you're laying it on a little too thick. I'm like, oh, gee, shucks. No, come on. It's not that great. I there are some people who have given me praise beyond what I think I deserve, but I'll take it. Thanks a lot. Thank you very much. So until the season finale, the exciting season finale, remember, he who dies with the most toys is dead.